What if I told you that some of the most powerful figures in American history were at the center of secret plots and political conspiracies?
In 1777, George Washington, Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, was fighting on two fronts, one against the British Redcoats and one against enemies in his own ranks.
That some of the earliest presidents of the United States were entangled in schemes involving everything from military coups to shady political deals. Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into some of the most fascinating and sometimes forgotten conspiracies involving U.S. presidents during the 1700s and 1800s. Let's start with George Washington and the Conway Cabal. You probably know Washington as the revered first president and general of the Continental Army. But did you know not everyone in his ranks was a fan?
Battle of Brandywine, Washington's army failed to stop the Redcoats, who marched triumphant into the then capital. Washington's impeccable reputation as commander-in-chief was called into question.
Yep, in the middle of the Revolutionary War, a secret plot was brewing to have Washington removed from command. Enter the Conway Cabal, a group of Continental officers unhappy with Washington's leadership during the tough years of 1777 and 1778. These guys weren't just whispering complaints behind his back, they were actively trying to get him replaced by General Horatio Gates.
For Gates, the timing was good. Thomas Conway, an Irish-born soldier, had written to him criticizing Washington's leadership, and when the letter was revealed, it made Washington's defenders wary.
Why Gates? Well, he had just scored a big victory at the Battle of Saratoga, and some thought he'd be a better leader. But here's the kicker. Gates didn't even directly push for the position. Instead, it was General Thomas Conway, a critic of Washington, who started stirring the pot. The conspiracy got so intense that letters were written and secret meetings held, but Washington had friends in high places.
Congress was divided. Those who wanted to replace Washington knew that opposing him openly would be risky.
Thanks to timely warnings, the plot was exposed, and instead of being ousted, Washington's reputation only grew stronger. The Conway Cabal? It fizzled out, leaving its conspirators in the shadows of history. Next up, Aaron Burr and his wild plot to create a whole new nation. Aaron Burr is best known for being the guy who shot Alexander Hamilton, but there's so much more to his story.
It was 1806, and the United States was grappling with what some might describe as the nation's first real modern politician.
After his vice presidency under Thomas Jefferson, Burr had grander ambitions than just fading into the background.
2 years prior, in 1803, President Thomas Jefferson oversaw the purchase of the Louisiana Territory from France, which gave the United States control over the Mississippi and, more importantly, the port of New Orleans.
From 1805 to 1807, he was allegedly involved in what's now known as the Burr Conspiracy, a plot to establish an independent nation in the western U.S. territories and parts of Mexico. Sounds far-fetched? Well, it gets even juicier. Burr had secret meetings with wealthy backers, recruited a small army, and allegedly schemed to seize control of New Orleans and carve out a new empire in the West.
While we today still don't know exactly what Burr's true intentions were, the general belief is that Burr wanted to create a new, independent country that included parts of the Louisiana Territory and perhaps even parts of Mexico.
He even enlisted the help of U.S. General James Wilkinson, who was serving as a double agent for Spain. The plan started to unravel when Wilkinson turned on Burr and tipped off President Jefferson. Burr was arrested and put on trial for treason. But here's the twist. He was acquitted due to a lack of solid evidence, leaving historians to debate whether he really intended to create a new country or if it was all just a big misunderstanding.
There's even evidence to suggest that Burr even plotted to conquer the United States proper, not just the Western territories. Other accounts claim that Burr sought to create a new dynasty with him as the nation's first emperor or king.
Either way, Burr's political career was over, and he lived out the rest of his life in obscurity. Now let's move to 1824 and talk about the corrupt bargain. Imagine this, a presidential election where no candidate wins enough electoral votes and the decision goes to the House of Representatives.
The top three candidates, John Quincy Adams, Henry Clay, and Andrew Jackson, were all from the Republican Party, the only party that existed at the time.
Sounds like chaos, right? Well, that's exactly what happened in the 1824 election. Andrew Jackson had won the most popular votes, but he didn't have enough electoral votes to secure the presidency. Enter Henry Clay, the Speaker of the House who had the power to sway the vote. Here's where things get shady. John Quincy Adams, who was in second place, supposedly struck a deal with Clay.
Jackson supporters accused Adams of making a secret deal with Clay, rewarding him with the office of Secretary of State in exchange for his votes for president. The deal became known as the corrupt bargain. Jackson's supporters split off from the Republican Party and forged a new party called the Democratic Republicans.
When Adams won the presidency and Clay was indeed named Secretary of State, people were outraged, calling it a corrupt bargain. Jackson and his supporters were furious, and the scandal followed Adams for the rest of his term, ultimately helping Jackson win the next election in 1828.
You get national Republicans who follow John Quincy Adams, and then you get Democratic Republicans who follow Andrew Jackson. And what ends up occurring is that ultimately Jackson's followers drop the Republican part of Democratic, and they just become known as the Jacksonian Democratic Party or the Jacksonian Democrats.
Was there really a backroom deal between Adams and Clay? We may never know for sure, but the rumors of corruption left a permanent stain on both of their legacies. Speaking of Andrew Jackson, let's talk about the bank war and the Panic of 1837.
As his first term neared an end, Jackson made a decision that would alter the role the federal government played in the economy.
Andrew Jackson was a man of the people, or at least that's how he portrayed himself. But his enemies had a different view, especially when it came to his war on the Second Bank of the United States. Jackson saw the bank as a tool for the rich and powerful, a corrupt institution that only benefited the elite at the expense of everyday Americans.
The Second Bank of the United States was given a 20-year charter by Congress in 1816. This charter granted the bank the power to act as the government's financial agent. The bank held the country's deposits, made loans, and regulated the currency.
So in 1833, he made the controversial decision to dismantle it. This led to all sorts of conspiracy theories. Some claimed that Jackson was deliberately trying to destabilize the economy for political gain, while others argued that powerful financial elites were plotting behind the scenes to bring Jackson down.
Jackson told his future vice president, Martin Van Buren, "The bank is trying to kill me, but I will kill it." Jackson, true to his character, determined to destroy the bank before its charter expired in 1836. Jackson ordered most of the U.S. government's funds to be moved out of the bank and into state banks, which his political opponents dubbed pet banks.
The result? Economic chaos. The destruction of the national bank led to a series of financial crises culminating in the Panic of 1837, one of the worst economic depressions in U.S. history. Critics of Jackson blamed him for the collapse, accusing him of recklessly playing with the nation's finances. Jackson's supporters, on the other hand, saw him as a hero standing up to the corrupt banking system.
Although the bank's operations were supervised by the President and Congress, around 80% of the bank was privately owned, and its profits benefited a large number of wealthy American and foreign stockholders.
The climate was so heated over the course of the bank wars that in 1835, Andrew Jackson became the first U.S. president to survive an assassination attempt. Whether you see him as a villain or a champion of the common man, there's no denying that Jackson's war on the bank stirred up plenty of controversy and conspiracy in his day. Let's dive into the biggest conspiracy of all, the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. When President Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth on April 14, 1865, it wasn't just a random act of violence. It was part of a broader conspiracy to destabilize the U.S. government in the aftermath of the Civil War.
But how did one man develop the means and the motive to kill the president at a time when America needed him most?
A famous actor with Confederate sympathies led a group of conspirators in a plot to kill not only Lincoln, but also Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward. The plan? Throw the country into chaos by decapitating its leadership.
But Booth's murder of President Abraham Lincoln is only part of the story. The rest is a hastily designed plan involving Southern sympathizers, abandoned kidnappings, wartime trials, and an attempt to decapitate the Union government just days after the end of the Civil War.
While Booth succeeded in killing Lincoln, his co-conspirators failed in their attempts on Johnson and Seward. Booth fled the scene, but was eventually tracked down and killed while other members of the conspiracy were captured and hanged. Here's the thing. Many still wonder how deep this conspiracy went. Were there more powerful figures behind the plot? Did Booth have financial or political backing from Confederate leaders? Or was he acting out of pure desperation and anger over the South's defeat? Also take a quick look at John H. Surratt, one of the key players in the Lincoln assassination conspiracy. Surratt, a Confederate sympathizer, was part of John Wilkes Booth's original plan to kidnap Lincoln. On the night of the assassination, Surratt was out of town, conveniently avoiding involvement in the actual murder. After Lincoln's death, Surratt went on the run, fleeing to Canada and then Europe. He even served briefly in the Vatican's military before being captured in 1866. Despite his deep ties to the conspiracy, Surratt's 1867 trial ended in a hung jury, and he was never convicted.
And then John Surratt Jr. was introduced to John Wilkes Booth, the man who would assassinate Lincoln. John Jr. was recruited into the conspiracy to kidnap Lincoln, and Confederate agents then began to come to Mary's boarding house a lot. George Atzerodt and Lewis Powell would board at her townhouse for some time, and these became co-conspirators in the plot to kill Lincoln.
His mother, Mary Surratt, wasn't so lucky. She became the first woman executed by the U.S. government for her role in the plot. Surratt's escape and eventual acquittal add a fascinating twist to the Lincoln conspiracy, leaving us to wonder just how far-reaching this plot really was. The full extent of the conspiracy remains a subject of debate among historians, and the mystery surrounding Lincoln's assassination only adds to the enduring intrigue. So there you have it. 5 major conspiracies involving U.S. presidents in the 1700s and 1800s. From secret military plots to presidential backroom deals, and economic warfare to assassination, American history is filled with moments of real scandals. Whether these stories were fueled by paranoia, ambition, or genuine plots, they remind us that power always comes with its fair share of intrigue. If you enjoyed this look at presidential conspiracies, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future shows about history's biggest scandals.